The shriek of metal cutting through plastic made Jennifer's blood run cold. Whipping around, she watched in horror as the HOA president slammed her pristine, reusable grocery bags to the ground, stomping on the contents with a gleam of triumph in his eyes. This was war. Jennifer stood frozen, her mouth agape, as the HOA president sneered at her. "That's what you get for defying the rules, Missy. We don't take kindly to rogue vegetable gardens and unapproved composters around here." But those are my groceries," she stammered, her mind racing to process the brazen act of destruction before her eyes. The crunch of glass and the squelch of crushed fruit filled the air, a macabre symphony to accompany the man's twisted smile. "Not anymore," he proclaimed, dusting off his hands with an air of satisfaction. "You know the rules. No unsightly displays in the front yard. And that," he gestured to the scattered remains of her carefully selected organic produce, "most definitely qualifies." Rage boiled inside Jennifer, but she forced herself to remain calm. "You have no right to do this. Those are my personal belongings, purchased with my own money. I demand you reimburse me immediately." The HOA president let out a cruel laugh. "Reimburse you? Ha! As if. You should have thought of that before you decided to thumb your nose at our community guidelines." He turned to walk away, tossing a casual remark over his shoulder. "Consider this your final warning, Missy. Next time, we won't be so forgiving." Jennifer watched, her fists clenched at her sides, as the man sauntered back to his immaculate lawn, leaving a trail of shattered dreams and ruined groceries in his wake. Her mind raced with a dozen different scenarios, each more satisfying than the last, but she knew better than to retaliate. Not yet, at least. As she began the somber task of gathering the remnants of her once vibrant produce, a new determination took root within her. This was not over. The HOA had chosen the wrong person to mess with. Jennifer owned a thriving chain of organic grocery stores, and she wasn't about to let some small-minded bureaucrat with a fondness for power tools trample all over her livelihood. A plan began to form in her mind, one that would teach the HOA president a lesson he'd never forget. With a newfound sense of purpose, she carefully loaded what was left of her shattered groceries into her car and headed home, her eyes narrow with resolve. This was war, and she was more than ready for the fight. The drive home was a blur, Jennifer's mind racing with a flurry of plans and schemes. As she pulled into her driveway, she took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions within. Methodically, she unloaded the ruined groceries, cataloging each item and its approximate value. "Okay, Jennifer, focus," she murmured to herself. "This is war, and you're going to win." Hurrying inside, she booted up her laptop and began furiously typing. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she accessed the company's internal systems, cross-referencing the damaged goods with inventory reports and pricing details. As the numbers quickly added up, a slow smile spread across her face. "Oh, this is going to be good," she whispered, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of determination and mischief. Reaching for her phone, Jennifer quickly dialed the number for the HOA president's residence. The line rang several times before a gruff voice answered. "What do you want?" the man growled. "Mr. Hawkins, this is Jennifer Wilkins from 234 Maple Street. I have a rather pressing matter to discuss with you." There was a moment of silence, followed by a derisive snort. "I already told you, Wilkins, your little gardening experiment is over. You're lucky I didn't call the cops on you for illegal dumping." "Oh, I'm not calling about the garden," Jennifer replied coolly. "I'm calling about the groceries you so thoughtfully destroyed earlier today." Another pause, then a low chuckle. "Ah, yes, that. Well, consider that a lesson learned, Missy. You." "Actually, Mr. Hawkins," Jennifer interrupted, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "I'm not interested in a lesson. I'm interested in being reimbursed for the damages." "Reimbursed?" the HOA president spluttered. "Are you out of your mind? I did you a favor by getting rid of that eyesore." eyesore. Jennifer's tone hardened. Those were $200 worth of organic, locally sourced produce, not to mention the high-quality reusable bags they were in. So, unless you'd like me to take this matter to the police and the local media, I suggest you have a cashier's check ready for the full amount by tomorrow morning. Silence stretched on the other end of the line, and Jennifer could practically hear the gears turning in the HOA president's head. Finally, he let out a defeated sigh. Fine. I'll have the check ready for you first thing tomorrow. But this isn't over, Wilkins. You're treading on thin ice around here. We'll see about that, Mr. Hawkins, Jennifer replied, a triumphant smile spreading across her face. We'll see about that. As she hung up the phone, Jennifer felt a surge of satisfaction. The first salvo in this war had been fired, and she had emerged victorious. But she knew this was only the beginning. The HOA president had no idea what was in store for him, and she couldn't wait to see the look on his face when he found out. The following morning, Jennifer arrived at the HOA president's doorstep, a stern expression on her face and a briefcase in hand. She rang the bell and waited, her heart pounding with anticipation. The door swung open, revealing a flustered-looking Mr. Hawkins, his brow furrowed in a scowl. "Well, you certainly don't waste any time, do you, Wilkins?" he grumbled, stepping aside to let her in. "When it comes to protecting my property, Mr. Hawkins, I don't believe in wasting time," Jennifer replied coolly, stepping into the pristine foyer. The HOA president led her to a small home office, gesturing for her to have a seat. "All right, let's get this over with," he sighed, reaching into his desk drawer and retrieving a thick envelope. "Here's your money. $200, just as you demanded." Jennifer arched a brow, setting the briefcase on the desk and opening it. "Actually, Mr. Hawkins, the total comes to a bit more than that." Hawkins' eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, a bit more?" "I thought we agreed on $200. "Yes, well, that was just for the groceries," Jennifer explained, pulling out a neatly organized stack of papers. "But when you take into account the cost of the reusable bags, the time and fuel spent driving to and from the grocery store, and the general inconvenience and emotional distress caused by your thoughtful actions." She paused, flashing him a sardonic smile. "The total comes out to $587.42. The HOA president's face turned a deep shade of red, his hands clenching into fists. "You can't be serious. That's outrageous. I'm not paying a single penny more than what we agreed on." Jennifer tesked, shaking her head. Now, Mr. Hawkins, let's not be hasty. After all, I could have easily taken this matter to the authorities and the local media, as I mentioned yesterday. But I decided to handle this civilly, between you and me." She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "So, unless you'd like this to become a much larger and more public issue, I suggest you write out that check for the full amount. Unless, of course, you prefer to explain to your fellow HOA members why you decided to destroy a resident's personal property." The HOA president's jaw clenched, his nostrils flaring with each labored breath. Jennifer could practically see the gears turning in his head as he weighed his options. Finally, with a defeated sigh, he reached into his desk and pulled out a checkbook. "Fine," he growled, scribbling furiously. "Here's your damn check. But don't think this is over, Wilkins. Not by a long shot." Jennifer accepted the check with a triumphant smile, tucking it safely into her briefcase. "Oh, I don't doubt that, Mr. Hawkins. In fact, I'm counting on it." As she turned to leave, she paused, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Oh, and by the way, I happen to own a chain of organic grocery stores. Just in case that's relevant to our future discussions." The color drained from the HOA president's face as the implication sank in. Jennifer suppressed a chuckle, striding out of the office with a renewed sense of purpose. The first battle had been won, but the war was far from over. As Jennifer drove back home, she couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. The HOA president had been forced to concede defeat, at least for now, and she knew it was only a matter of time before he retaliated. But Jennifer was ready. She had spent the night carefully crafting her next move, and she was determined to come out on top. This was more than just a petty dispute over a garden or some groceries. It had become a battle of wills, a test of who was willing to go furthest to protect their interests. Pulling into her driveway, Jennifer quickly made her way to the garage, where she had been secretly working on a special project. Unlocking the door, she stepped inside and surveyed her handiwork with a satisfied smile. Over the past few weeks, she had been meticulously restoring an old, beat-up pickup truck that she had purchased at a police auction. The vehicle was in rough shape, but with a little elbow grease and some creative modifications, it had been transformed into the perfect weapon for her next move. Grabbing a rag, Jennifer began wiping down the truck's exterior, ensuring it was spotless and presentable. As she worked, her mind raced with the details of her plan. She knew the HOA president would be keeping a close eye on her, so she had to be careful and calculated in her approach. Once the truck was gleaming, Jennifer stepped back and nodded to herself. All right, time to put the plan into action. Climbing behind the wheel, she fired up the engine and headed back towards the HOA president's house, her grip on the steering wheel tight with anticipation. As she neared the well-manicured neighborhood, she slowed the truck to a crawl, scanning the streets for any signs of her target. There, in the distance, she spotted Mr. Hawkins standing on his front lawn, surveying the community with a critical eye. Jennifer felt a surge of adrenaline as she recognized her opportunity. Pressing her foot down on the accelerator, she guided the truck straight towards the HOA president, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. At the last moment, she swerved the vehicle, sending a cascade of dirt and gravel spraying across the man's pristine lawn. Mr. Hawkins let out a startled yelp, his hands flying up to shield his face as the debris rained down around him. Jennifer couldn't help but chuckle as she watched the once proud HOA president scrambling to regain his footing, his carefully cultivated image utterly ruined. As she drove off, Jennifer felt a sense of satisfaction wash over her. The first shot had been fired, and she knew it was only a matter of time before Mr. Hawkins retaliated. But she was ready. This was war, and she was determined to win, no matter the cost. The following day, Jennifer arrived home to find a furious Mr. Hawkins waiting for her on her doorstep. His face was red with rage, and she could practically see the steam coming out of his ears. "Wilkins," he bellowed, storming towards her as she stepped out of her car. "What the hell do you think you're playing at?" Jennifer feigned innocence, her expression neutral. "I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Hawkins. I've been at work all day." "Don't give me that innocent act." The HOA president spat. "That little stunt you pulled with your truck yesterday has cost me a fortune in landscaping repairs." A slight smile tugged at the corners of Jennifer's lips. "I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I don't know what you're referring to. I was simply driving home, minding my own business." Hawkins let out a frustrated growl, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "Don't play dumb with me, Wilkins. I saw you. You deliberately sprayed gravel all over my lawn. Do you have any idea how much it's going to cost to fix that?" Jennifer shrugged nonchalantly. "Well, Mr. Hawkins, if you're concerned about the state of your lawn, perhaps you should consider investing in some better gardening equipment. I hear shovels can be quite effective at maintaining a pristine appearance." The HOA president's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Jennifer thought he might lunge at her. "You think you're clever, don't you, Wilkins? Well, let me tell you something. This little war of ours is far from over. You've made a powerful enemy today, and you're going to regret it." "I'm trembling in my boots," Jennifer deadpanned, her gaze unwavering. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some groceries to unload. Good day, Mr. Hawkins." Turning on her heel, she strode towards her front door, leaving the fuming HOA president in her wake. As she stepped inside, she couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. The ball was firmly in her court now, and she intended to keep it that way. Jennifer knew that Hawkins would be plotting his next move, and she had to be ready. She couldn't afford to let her guard down, not for a second. This was a battle of wits and wills, and she was determined to come out on top. With a steely resolve, she set about unloading her groceries, already mentally preparing for the next round of this ongoing war. Whatever Hawkins had in store for her, she was ready to face it head-on. After all, she had a few tricks of her own up her sleeve. The following week, Jennifer arrived home to find her carefully tended vegetable garden in complete disarray. The once lush plants were trampled, the delicate leaves crushed, and the soil churned into a muddy mess. Fury boiled within her as she surveyed the devastation, her hands clenching into tight fists. There was no doubt in her mind who was responsible for this wanton act of destruction. "Mr. Hawkins," she growled, her eyes narrowing with determination. Rushing inside, Jennifer quickly changed into a pair of old jeans and a sturdy pair of work boots. She then headed to the garage, retrieving a shovel and a trowel. If the HOA president wanted a war, then a war he would get. Marching back to the ruined garden, Jennifer set to work, meticulously digging up and replanting the damaged vegetables. As she labored, her mind raced with possible retaliatory measures. She knew she had to be careful, though. Any overt act of retaliation could land her in legal trouble. After several hours of backbreaking work, Jennifer stood back, surveying her handiwork with a critical eye. The garden was by no means perfect, but it was a far cry better than the trampled mess she had discovered earlier. Wiping the sweat from her brow, she turned and headed back to the house, her mind already hatching a plan. If Hawkins wanted to play dirty, then she would oblige him, but on her own terms. The next morning, Jennifer made her way to the local hardware store, armed with a list of supplies. She spent the better part of the day carefully assembling her latest creation, working with a sense of purpose and determination. As the sun began to set, Jennifer stood back, admiring her handiwork. The device was simple, yet ingenious. A motion-activated sprinkler system, rigged to soak any unwelcome visitors who dared to set foot in her garden. With a satisfied smile, Jennifer buried the device beneath the soil, carefully concealing the triggers and sensors. Then, with a sense of anticipation, she waited. It didn't take long for her plan to bear fruit. Just 2 days later, as Jennifer was preparing dinner, she heard a familiar sound, the unmistakable yelp of the HOA president, followed by the hiss of the sprinklers. Rushing to the window, she peered out to see Hawkins standing in the middle of her garden, his once pristine suit soaked through. The look of shock and outrage on his face was priceless, and Jennifer couldn't help but let out a gleeful laugh. "Payback's a bitch, Mr. Hawkins," she murmured, a triumphant grin spreading across her face. As the HOA president stumbled away, cursing and sputtering, Jennifer knew that the war had just entered a new phase. The battle lines had been drawn, and she was more determined than ever to come out on top. In the days that followed, the tension between Jennifer and the HOA president reached a fever pitch. Hawkins had clearly not anticipated the level of ingenuity and determination that Jennifer possessed, and he was struggling to gain the upper hand. Jennifer, on the other hand, was relishing in her newfound position of power. She had always been an independent-minded woman, and the thought of some small-minded bureaucrat trying to dictate how she lived her life only served to strengthen her resolve. One morning, as Jennifer was sipping her coffee and perusing the local newspaper, a headline caught her eye. HOA president facing allegations of misuse of funds. A mischievous grin spread across her face as she read the article, which detailed the HOA's questionable financial practices under Hawkins' leadership. Apparently, the community members had been growing increasingly dissatisfied with the way their dues were being spent, and an anonymous whistleblower had come forward with a trove of damning evidence. Jennifer knew exactly who that whistleblower was, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. She had quietly been gathering information and documentation for weeks, carefully building a case against the HOA president. With the scandal now unfolding in the public eye, Jennifer knew it was time to strike. Placing a call to the local news station, she arranged for an exclusive interview, ready to expose the truth about Hawkins' corrupt practices. The following day, the community was abuzz with the revelations. Angry residents stormed the HOA office, demanding answers and accountability. Hawkins, in a desperate attempt to save face, tried to pin the blame on Jennifer, but his claims were quickly dismissed as the evidence against him mounted. As the chaos unfolded, Jennifer watched from the sidelines, a satisfied smile on her face. She had won this round, and she knew it was only a matter of time before the HOA president's grip on power was completely severed. But she wasn't done yet. With the community's trust in the HOA shaken, Jennifer saw an opportunity to take her revenge to the next level. Reaching out to a group of disgruntled residents, she began to lay the groundwork for a coup, a plan to overthrow Hawkins and install new, more responsible leadership. The wheels were in motion, and Jennifer could almost taste the sweet victory that was to come. The HOA president had no idea what was about to hit him, and she couldn't wait to see the look on his face when he realized he had picked a fight with the wrong woman. The day of the special HOA meeting dawned, and Jennifer could barely contain her excitement. After weeks of careful planning and strategic maneuvering, the time had come to deliver the final blow to the HOA president's reign of terror. As she arrived at the community center, Jennifer could feel the palpable tension in the air. The residents, once cowed by Hawkins' bullying tactics, had found their collective voice, and they were ready to stand up and fight. Jennifer took her seat near the front of the room, her gaze locked on the door, waiting for the HOA president to make his entrance. When he finally did, the room erupted in a chorus of boos and jeers, the sound echoing off the walls. Hawkins, his face flushed with a mixture of anger and humiliation, tried to restore order, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. The residents were in no mood to listen to his excuses or empty promises. Jennifer rose from her seat, her presence commanding the attention of the room. "My fellow community members," she began, her voice ringing with authority. "For too long, we have been subjected to the tyrannical rule of our HOA president, Mr. Hawkins." A smattering of applause rippled through the crowd, and Jennifer continued, her words laced with a quiet intensity. "Time and time again, he has abused his power, trampling on our rights and disregarding our concerns. But no more." Turning to face Hawkins, she leveled him with a steely gaze. "Mr. Hawkins, your reign of terror ends today. The residents of this community have spoken, and they have demanded your immediate resignation." The HOA president's eyes widened, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "You can't do this," he sputtered. "I won't resign." Jennifer simply shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "Oh, but you will, Mr. Hawkins. You see, I've been doing a little digging, and I've uncovered some rather interesting information about your financial practices." She paused for dramatic effect, savoring the look of growing panic on Hawkins' face. "It seems that a significant portion of the HOA's funds have been funneled into your personal accounts. Embezzlement, I believe the term is." The crowd erupted in outraged cries, and Jennifer raised a hand to silence them. "Now, I'm sure you'll have plenty of time to explain yourself to the authorities. But for now, I think it's best if you gather your belongings and leave. This community no longer has a place for you." Hawkins opened his mouth to protest, but one look at the sea of determined faces before him told him that the battle was lost. Shoulders slumped in defeat, he turned and shuffled out of the room, the sound of triumphant applause ringing in his ears. As the HOA president disappeared from view, Jennifer couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. The war was over, and she had emerged victorious. She had stood up to the bully, fought for her rights, and reclaimed her community. With a contented sigh, Jennifer turned to the residents, a warm smile on her face. "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe this calls for a celebration. Who's up for a little organic grocery shopping on me?" The resounding cheer that echoed through the room was all the answer she needed.